The creek was not wide, but it looked angry. Cold water ran fast over dark stones, making a low sound like teeth chattering. Thin ice hugged the edges, and the air smelled sharp, like wet earth and pine. On both sides, trees leaned in close, their branches bare, as if they were watching anyone who dared to cross. A woman named Hannah stood at the bank with her arms wrapped around herself. Her boots were already damp from walking through soggy ground. She had come alone, which was not her normal way. Hannah was the type who liked plans, lists, safe routes, and predictable days. But life had stopped being predictable 2 months ago, when she lost her job and her apartment in the same week. The job ended first. The company cut people fast and cold, like it was just numbers on a screen. Hannah tried to stay calm, tried to tell herself she would find something else. Then her landlord raised the rent again, and the small savings she had left started to vanish. She packed her things into boxes, moved into a friend's spare room, and told herself it was temporary. Temporary felt like a word people used to avoid fear. That morning, Hannah's friend had handed her a paper envelope. "This was in the mailbox," her friend said. No name, but it was taped to the inside. Hannah had opened it carefully, expecting something ordinary. Instead she found a hand-drawn map and a small metal key. The map was simple, almost childish, but clear enough. A line for the road, a bend near a broken sign, then a sketch of trees and a creek. Next to the creek, someone had written one sentence. "If you want your life back, cross here." Hannah had stared at those words for a long time. She had asked her friend if it was a joke. Her friend swore she did not know anything about it. Hannah should have thrown it away. She should have laughed and went to search for jobs. She should have done the normal safe thing. But something inside her had been tired of safe things that still went wrong. So now she stood here, at the edge of the cold creek, holding the key in her palm like it could burn her skin. Across the water, the forest looked darker. The ground on the far side rose slightly, leading into thicker trees. There was no clear path, only a thin space between bushes where someone might have walked before. Hannah took a slow breath. "It's just a map," she whispered, like saying it out loud would make it less strange. She searched for a crossing point. A fallen log lay a few feet upstream, thick enough to walk on if she was careful. It was slick with moisture and patches of ice. Hannah tested it with one foot, then pulled back. Her stomach tightened. She could turn around now. She could go home and pretend none of this happened. Then she pictured her friend's spare room. The polite smiles. The unspoken worry. The feeling of taking up space she did not own. She pictured the rejection emails on her phone. She pictured the small fear that kept growing, day by day, like a shadow that never got tired. Hannah stepped onto the log. Her arms stretched out for balance. The log swayed slightly under her weight, and her heart jumped. Cold air bit at her face. The creek rushed below her, fast and loud. Halfway across, the wind pushed, and her boot slipped. Hannah grabbed a branch hanging near the log, her fingers digging into bark. She froze, breathing hard, then slowly adjusted her footing. She moved one step, then another, until her boot touched the far bank. When she stepped onto solid ground, her knees felt weak with relief. She turned and looked back at the creek. It did not look like much, but crossing it felt like she had crossed a line inside herself too. She followed the map into the trees. The forest was quiet in a way that made small sounds feel loud. Her breath. The crunch of leaves. A bird calling once, then silence again. The map showed a large rock shaped like a tooth. She found it after 10 minutes, exactly where the drawing said it would be. Next was an old tree with 2 trunks that split like a fork. She found that too. Each match made Hannah's skin prickle. Whoever made this map knew this place well. And they had made it for her, or at least for someone like her. Then she saw the hill. It rose gently, covered in moss and tangled roots. At first it looked like nothing special. But as she climbed, she noticed stone half buried in the dirt, like the remains of a wall. The map showed a mark near the top, a small square, drawn like a door. Hannah's pace slowed. She felt foolish and nervous at the same time. At the top of the hill, she found it. A door. Not a wooden door standing upright like a normal house. This door was set into the side of the hill itself, framed by stone and covered in vines. The wood was dark and thick, and the handle was iron, cold and worn. It looked old, but not broken. It looked like it still had a job to do. For a long moment Hannah just stared, her mouth slightly open. The key in her hand suddenly felt heavier. She stepped closer and brushed away vines with trembling fingers. There was a keyhole beneath the handle. Clean. Not rusted. Like it had been used recently. Hannah's throat went dry. She tried the handle first. It did not move. Locked. She lifted the key and slid it into the keyhole. It fit perfectly. Hannah's hand paused. She listened to the forest. Nothing. She turned the key. There was a soft click, gentle and certain. Hannah pulled the handle. The door opened inward with a slow creak, as if it was waking from a long sleep. Cold air rolled out, different from the winter air outside. This cold felt deeper, like stone and shadow. Hannah stepped forward carefully, and the door swung wider, showing a narrow passage lit by small lights along the walls. Lights. That made her blink. Who put lights inside a hill in the middle of nowhere? Hannah took one step into the passage, then another. The floor was stone. Dry. Clean. The lights were soft and warm, not harsh. The passage sloped downward. Behind her, the door remained open. Hannah glanced back at the forest. The doorway looked like a secret the world had forgotten. She went deeper. After a few minutes, the passage opened into a room. Hannah stopped so suddenly she almost lost her balance. The room was not a cave. It was a finished space, wide and organized, like part of a hidden building. Shelves lined one wall. A table stood in the center. A small stove sat against another wall, and a kettle rested on top as if someone had used it that morning. The air smelled faintly of tea and wood smoke. Her eyes moved across objects that did not belong in a wilderness hill. Blankets neatly folded. A first aid kit. A lantern. A stack of notebooks. A jar of pens. A small mirror. A coat hanging on a hook. Hannah took a slow step forward. On the table lay a letter, sealed with tape. Her name was written on the front. Hannah. Her heart pounded. She had not told anyone about the map except her friend. And she did not even know who had delivered it. Her fingers shook as she opened the letter. Inside, the writing was simple. Hannah, if you are here, it means you did not give up on yourself. This place is called the Hollow Room. It is not magic. It is not a trap. It is a chance. Read the notebook labeled First Steps. And please, before you panic, make tea. Someone will come soon. Do not leave yet. Hannah read the words twice, then a third time. Her thoughts raced. Someone will come soon. Who? Why? She looked at the shelves until she found a notebook with a label in thick black marker. First Steps. Hannah opened it. The first page said, Rule 1, you are safe here. Rule 2, you are allowed to rest. Rule 3, you are not allowed to lie to yourself. Hannah swallowed. The next pages were filled with practical things. Checklists. Simple tasks. Small goals. Notes about breathing when panic rises. Notes about saving money. Notes about building skills. Notes about asking for help without shame. It was like someone had studied her mind from the inside. Hannah flipped pages faster. There were sections on job hunting, budgeting, confidence, routines. There were also strange sections, what to do when you feel invisible. How to speak when your voice feels small. How to walk into a room and act like you belong. Hannah lowered the notebook, staring at the table. This was not just a hidden room. It was a plan. Her eyes caught something else on the shelf. A file folder labeled with a different word. Hannah work. She froze again. She opened the folder with careful hands. Inside were printed copies of her resume. Updated. Cleaner than her old version. There were suggested cover letters. There were lists of local companies hiring. There were interview questions with prepared answers. Even notes like, "Remember to smile when you greet the receptionist." Hannah's breath came fast. "How?" she whispered. She looked around the room again, suddenly feeling watched. Not in a scary way, but in a way that made her feel exposed. Her phone had no signal. The lights hummed softly. The kettle sat on the stove like it was waiting for her to touch it. Hannah set the folder down and stepped back, her foot bumping the table. The sound echoed slightly. She felt heat rise behind her eyes, not from fear alone. From anger too. Because someone had known she was struggling and did not help sooner. Because someone had access to her personal life. Because her life had become a project for a stranger. Then she read the letter again. "Make tea. Someone will come soon. Do not leave yet." Hannah stared at the kettle, then at the cups on the shelf. She hesitated, then filled the kettle with water from a covered container in the corner. The water was clean. She set it on the stove and followed the instructions on a small card taped nearby. It lit with a simple switch. That made her pause again. Electricity. Here. The kettle began to warm. While she waited, Hannah's gaze landed on a small corkboard on the wall. It held photos pinned in neat rows. At first she thought they were random nature shots. Then she looked closer. They were not nature shots. They were pictures of people. Not close-up, but clear enough. People sitting on benches, walking through town, standing in lines, holding bags. Ordinary moments. Hannah leaned closer. On one photo, she recognized a familiar street corner near her old job. On another, the bus stop she used to take. On another, the building where her landlord lived. Then she saw herself. A photo of her sitting on the steps outside the library where she used to work. Her shoulders slumped, her face turned away, a box of her belongings beside her. Hannah's stomach dropped. She stepped back so fast she hit the shelf. A pen jar rattled. The kettle whistled sharply. Hannah flinched and turned it off, her hands trembling. She poured tea without tasting it, her eyes still locked on the board. Someone had been watching her, tracking her, planning for her. Hannah held the warm cup and tried to steady her breathing, but her thoughts were sharp and fast. She did not know if she should run or stay. The door behind her felt far away now, like the forest had closed its mouth. Then she heard it. A sound from the passage. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Coming down the stone slope. Hannah set the cup down quietly. Her hands lifted without her meaning to, palms open, like she could show she was not a threat. The footsteps stopped just outside the room. A shadow fell across the doorway. And then a voice spoke, calm and low. "Hannah," the voice said, as if they had known her forever. "Thank you for coming. Please do not be afraid. I owe you an explanation." Hannah stood still as the shadow filled the doorway. Her heart beat so hard she felt it in her ears. The room that had felt careful and prepared only moments ago now felt tight, like the walls were listening. The person stepped forward into the light. It was a woman. She looked older than Hannah, maybe in her late 40s. Her hair was tied back simply. Her clothes were plain and practical. Her face carried lines that came from years of thinking more than smiling. She did not look dangerous. She looked tired, in a deep way that Hannah recognized. "My name is Leora," the woman said. "I built this place." Hannah did not answer. Her eyes moved from the woman to the passage behind her, then back to the corkboard of photos. "You followed me," Hannah said finally. Her voice did not shake, but it was thin. "Yes," Leora replied. "I did. And I am sorry for the fear that causes. I will explain everything." Hannah folded her arms. "You put a key in my mailbox," she said. "You watched my life fall apart. You made plans for me without asking. Leora nodded slowly. I did, she said again. And I would do it again. Anger flashed through Hannah like heat. You do not get to decide that, she said. You are right, Leora answered. I do not get to decide your life. I only get to offer a door. Hannah laughed once, sharp and short. A door hidden in a hill, she said. That is not an offer. That is control. Leora did not argue. She gestured toward the table. May I sit? She asked. Hannah hesitated, then nodded once. Leora sat across from her, hands resting flat, open. I was where you are now, Leora said. Not in the same city. Not the same job. But the same edge. Hannah said nothing. 10 years ago, Leora continued, I lost everything I thought made me real. My work. My home. My name meant nothing to anyone anymore. I crossed a creek too. Not this one. But it felt just as cold. Hannah's jaw tightened. That does not explain the photos. Leora looked at the corkboard. No, she said. It does not. She stood and walked toward it. She removed one pin and held the photo up. It showed a man sitting on a bench, head down, hands empty. That is a teacher, Leora said. He lost his job after budget cuts. He thought he had failed. He came here. He left 3 months later with a new start. She removed another photo. A woman outside a grocery store. That woman opened her own small business last year, Leora said. Then she removed Hannah's photo last. She did not hand it to her. Hannah, she said gently, I watch patterns. I do not watch people for entertainment. I look for moments when someone is about to disappear. Hannah felt something twist inside her. Disappear, she repeated. Yes, Leora said. Not die. Fade. Become smaller every day until they stop asking for more. Hannah's throat burned. She turned away. You think you saved them, she said. No, Leora replied. I think they saved themselves. I just made sure they were not alone when they did. Hannah walked toward the shelves, running her fingers over the notebooks. Why me? She asked quietly. Leora's voice softened. Because you did not stop caring, she said. Even when no one paid you for it. You stayed late to help people find books they needed. You remembered names. You listened. And when your life broke, you blamed yourself instead of the system that failed you. Hannah closed her eyes. The words landed too accurately to be guessed. You should not know that, Hannah said. I know because I used to be you, Leora replied. I worked in places that were quiet and forgotten too. That is how I learned to see. Hannah turned back to her. So what now? She asked. You give me tea and a plan and expect gratitude. No, Leora said. I expect honesty. She pointed to the notebook labeled First Steps. Did you read Rule 3? She asked. Hannah nodded. Do not lie to yourself. Then answer this, Leora said. If you walked back across that creek right now, what would change? Hannah opened her mouth. Then she closed it. Nothing. The answer sat heavy and clear. Leora did not smile. This room is not meant to keep you, she said. It is meant to hold you steady long enough to choose what comes next. Hannah felt her anger soften into something more dangerous. Hope. How long do people stay? Hannah asked. As long as they need, Leora replied. Days. Weeks. Sometimes months. They work. They learn. They rest. Then they leave. No one is forced. And the door, Hannah said. It only opens for certain people. Yes, Leora said. People at the edge. Hannah's fingers tightened around the mug. What do you get out of this? She asked. Leora looked at her for a long moment. Redemption, she said quietly. For what? Hannah asked. For walking past people when I was afraid. Leora replied. For believing I was small when I was not. Silence filled the room again. Hannah stared at the passage leading back up. If I leave, she said, will you follow me? No, Leora answered. The key will stop working once you decide. Hannah looked down at the key in her pocket. It felt heavier than before. And if I stay? She asked. Leora met her eyes. Then tomorrow, she said, we start rebuilding your life from the inside out. Hannah's chest rose and fell slowly. She had crossed the creek. She had opened the door. She had seen what was hidden. Now the hardest step waited. Choosing to stay. Hannah lifted her eyes and spoke, her voice steady but quiet. I will stay, she said. But only if you tell me the truth about one thing. Leora leaned forward. What thing? She asked. Hannah held up the photo of herself from the corkboard. Who was with me that day? She asked. And why were they there before you ever sent the key? Leora's face changed. Just slightly. Enough. Leora did not answer right away. She leaned back in her chair and let out a slow breath, like someone deciding whether to reopen an old wound. The lights hummed softly above them. The hollow room felt smaller now, not because of fear, but because the truth was close. The person with you that day, Leora said finally, was me. Hannah's stomach tightened. That is not an answer, she said. I saw the photo. You were not standing near me. Leora nodded. I was not close enough to be seen, she replied. But I was there. And I was not alone. Hannah's fingers curled around the edge of the table. Then who else was there? She asked. Leora stood and walked to a narrow cabinet near the stove. She opened it and took out a thin folder. She placed it on the table between them. Inside was a single photo. Hannah leaned forward. The image showed her sitting on the library steps, the box of belongings beside her, her face turned away. But now she saw something she explained away before. A woman standing across the street. Older. Watching. Not Leora. Hannah felt her breath catch. Who is that? She asked. Leora's voice softened. Her name was Marin, she said. She was my sister. Hannah looked up sharply. Was. She repeated. Leora nodded. She worked at the same library as you, she said. Different shift. Different section. She noticed you long before I did. Hannah's mind raced back through memories. Quiet smiles. A woman who once helped her carry a stack of books. Someone who always said hello. She talked about you, Leora continued. She said you reminded her of herself before life became heavy. She said you listened to people like they mattered. Hannah swallowed. What happened to her? She asked. Leora's hands trembled slightly, then steadied. She did not cross her creek in time, she said. The words landed with quiet force. She lost her job too, Leora went on. She lost her place. She told me she would be fine. She told me not to worry. Then one morning, she was gone. Hannah closed her eyes. The hollow room was built after that, Leora said. Not as a solution. As an apology. A promise that I would not watch someone fade again. Hannah opened her eyes slowly. So the door led to me because of her, she said. Yes, Leora replied. She believed in you before you believed in yourself. Silence filled the room, thick and real. Hannah felt tears rise, not sharp, but heavy and warm. She did not wipe them away. I thought I was invisible, Hannah said. You were seen, Leora replied. By the right person. Hannah stood and walked to the shelves, touching the notebooks, the plans, the care built into every corner of the room. All of this, she said, it is not about control. It is about grief. And hope, Leora added. Days passed inside the hollow room. Hannah stayed. She followed the first steps notebook slowly, honestly. She rested without guilt. She rewrote her resume in her own words. She practiced interviews out loud. She learned how to say no, how to ask, how to breathe through fear instead of running from it. She crossed the creek every few days, not to leave, but to remember she could. One morning, Leora placed a new folder on the table. Inside was a job offer. A small community center was reopening its library. They needed someone patient, someone steady, someone who believed books could still change lives. Hannah read the letter twice. Then she laughed and cried at the same time. Weeks later, Hannah stood at the edge of the creek again. This time the water did not scare her. It sounded almost friendly. She crossed the log without hesitation. On the other side, she turned back once. The hill looked like any other hill now. The door blended into the earth. Quiet. Complete. Leora stood beside her. "The key will stop working after today," she said gently. Hannah nodded. "I know," she replied. She placed the key on a stone near the creek. Not as a goodbye, as a thank you. Hannah walked away with steady steps. Her life did not become perfect, but it became hers again. And far beneath the hill, the hollow room waited. Not for everyone. Only for those brave enough to cross the cold creek and choose themselves.